We are coming into the final demo of our quality control and risk segment. And folks, just a reminder, I think we're having another trivia giveaway coming up after this next demo. So stay tuned and pay attention. So right now we have Rohan Tagra joining us from Azimuth GRC. Rohan, welcome.
Thanks, Leighton. Thanks for having us.
We're thrilled to have you. Let me give a quick introduction to the company, and then the virtual stage is yours. So kick us off with a question. Is compliance giving you a headache? Azimuth GRC revolutionizes the world of regulatory compliance by providing companies a single software platform that easily manages compliance and provides automated updates on the ever-changing regulations handed down by federal and state governments. Azimuth GRC has the largest structured inventory of laws and regulations available in the mortgage industry, creating a single source of truth that allows companies and organizations to check every box when it comes to compliance. Enjoy the demo.
Great. Thanks, Clayton. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, perfect, clear, and we can hear you well.
Perfect. Thanks, Clayton. I'm going to start out with a little history. I'm Rohan Tagra. I'm the CEO and founder of Azimuth GRC. And I spent the majority of my career in the banking space. I was with JP Morgan before I started this, and before that with LPS, which is now Black Knight, and prior to that with Bank of America. And one of the things that I dealt with a lot was regulatory orders, consent orders, dealing with regulations in the operations, and coming off of the 2008 financial crisis to fix that. So as I was doing that, I kept looking for a software solution that would help us understand all the laws that are applicable to us, what departments they belong to, what do they mean from a business standpoint, not a legal standpoint. And we continued to look for a solution and couldn't find one. And in multiple different roles that I had, I looked for one, couldn't find one. And we spent millions of dollars trying to build a solution internally where we brought multiple things together. And it was just a bear and a challenge. So I thought I would step out and go build this because it was something that was needed in the marketplace. And as I'm sure many of you know, dealing with regulations in the marketplace is not easy to keep up with all the changes. And so what we did was to revolutionize that, automate it, and we're going to walk you through what we have built to do that. Just to give you a little overview, and then we're going to jump right into the demo, is what makes us different is we do data, content, and software. You'll find others that do one of the three. So for example, in data, what we do is we bring in all the laws, federal and state, along with other sources such as the CFPB exam guide, as well as the investor guidelines, and we turn those into data. So if you're used to reading those on a web page or in a PDF document, we've turned each of those into a data base record. So when you read a law and it goes ABC, Roman I, 1, 2, 3, each of those is turned into data. The reason that's important is it's going to allow us to drive that down into the operations and allow you to manage your compliance at that level. And then from a content standpoint, what we build is we take of the million laws that are out there between the US code, the Code of Federal Regulations, and the state laws. We've got a law firm, Bradley, Arat, that we work with. They go in and they will say, of the million laws, here's the 5,000 that apply to mortgage. And then they'll do additional content. So they'll categorize them into things like foreclosure, bankruptcy, interest on escrow, taxes, about 50 plus different categories. So think about this, you've got a 50-state survey at your fingertips all the time. And then they also write operational requirements. So you must send a letter out in 3 days, making it plain business language. And then finally, we've got the software that's going to allow you to demonstrate compliance and map your controls and do a gap assessment. So you'll know every law that applies down to each of your departments. It'll be broken into operational requirements, and then we give you workflow to map your policies, procedures, systems, job aid. You get to define your control environment. So with that as a bit of an overlay, why don't we jump into the application? So I'm going to start with the end, some of the reporting, and then walk you through how we get here. So the first piece here is a CFPB control environment report that we've built. What this shows you is we've brought every one of the CFPB exam modules into the platform, as well as the regulations that tie to those. So what you're seeing here is module 1 has multiple regulations tied to it, and those have 10 operational requirements associated with it. Module 2 has multiple regulations, and they have 67 associated requirements. So that's what you see going down this. This is the origination on the top, and then the servicing down here. And then going across, this would be your specific control environment based off of the gap assessments and the mapping you will have done within the platform. And so what you have here is in module 1, you have 10 procedures, 42 policies, 1 job aid that's mapped to this. So it's giving you your full control environment, not just policies and procedures, but systems, letters, operational procedures. And then you have the ability to see how am I conforming to this or complying with it? How many don't require any updates? How many do require an update? So again, you can get a quick snapshot of your control environment to understand exactly what you're in compliance with. What are the things that you may need to put an action plan around? That's an example of one of the reports that we have. And if you ever prepared for a CFPB exam or a day 1 exam, when you get your day 1 letter, I'm sure you've seen that it can take a long time, weeks, months to get prepared for that. Now you're going to have this at your fingertips by being able to click on a report and get that information. We also have something that we call the lineage report. So this is going to give you full traceability of a regulation or a statute all the way from the law down into your operations. You're going to see every group that's accountable for it. So let's take this. This is a HMDA regulation on compilation of reportable data. What you'll see here is, here's the reg. You'll see which of your groups, and these are groups based off of your nomenclature, the way you do business, not the way from a software nomenclature, that this law has been mapped to 6 different groups. And there are multiple requirements, about 30 requirements on this regulation. And you'll see the closing group accepted 3 of those requirements. And then the application group accepted 8 of those requirements. So the great thing here is you're able to understand which group is responsible for which portion of the regulation. As you're all well aware, laws aren't structured like our operations. You've got 1 law, but in this case, it takes 6 groups to execute on that. And one of the issues that I've experienced in the past is that there's 30 requirements. If you don't have full traceability, what happens is you get the first 10, 15, 20, and you think you're covering that law. And then when you get an audit done, those last 10 or a handful of things get missed, and that can create an issue or a finding. And so here you can see that what are the different controls that have been mapped to that requirement. And then how are those controls assessed? So again, this type of information at your fingertips, if you had to go try and figure out, hey, 1 regulation, who's working on it? How are we complying with it? What's the information in our procedures or policies that help us demonstrate compliance? Be a pretty difficult challenge to get to. But now you've got this at your fingertips. So I'm going to step back and start from the beginning and show you the laws that we have in, as well as how a control assessment is completed. So first, when I say we bring in all the laws, I'm going to give you, for example, here's all the states and the different regulators. We brought the CARES Act in as well. For those of you that might be dealing with some of the forbearance items, we've got the COVID executive orders in as well. So we're very flexible in terms of the ability to bring in additional sources very quickly. So in this case, if we look at the Florida statutes, we bring in the entire code, not just a specific regulation or 2. And then you can see we've got all the chapters within that banking title, all the different sections. And then when you look through here, we've got the full content because we don't want you to have to go to another source to look at that. So here you can read through, and each of these are individual records. And again, this is going to be important as you see us walk through the different requirements in the mapping. So from here, where I was talking about a quick 50-state survey, I can come in here and say, give me all my banking and mortgage laws and statutes and regulations that apply. So this is based off of the work that we've brought into the application with the content. So this is a listing, and you can see it goes by. We've got the CFPB exam guide. We got different states in there. And then the categories I was referring to earlier, here's a list of about 50 of them. And you can go through and say, if I just want to see all my escrow regulations and statutes, and this will give you a breakdown at the federal and state level, along with the exam guide. And so if we were to go pick a CFPB exam guide one, oops, a CFPB one. And this may help us. This is quite a long regulation here. And you'll see that we've also mapped this to the CFPB exam guide. So as you were seeing in that report that we showed you earlier, this would be example one of the regulations that was tied to these different modules. And here's all the requirements that are associated with that. So instead of reading this legalese here, which is a quite large regulation, you've got it broken down to plain business language. You must require a borrower to pay the following amounts into an escrow account. Certain charges allowed at closing or upon the creation. So if you think about sending this down into the operations, it makes it much easier for them to understand what they're going to have to do and what they have to have in their procedures to conform with it. I'll quickly show you how we do a control assessment. So you'll go into the business module. You'll have all the laws and regulations mapped to each of those specific departments. So we'll pick a customer service one here for Minnesota. And I've given you a cross sample where we've looked at a state, we've looked at a federal, now we'll look at another state. And so each group will go in that this law has been mapped to, and they will come in and assess which of the requirements they do. So this one's got a number of requirements, but this group might come in and say, I'll do these two. And then they'll submit, and now they're able to map their controls. And you define your control type. Here we've got job aids, we've got letters, policies. You might call it an SOP. That's what you would load into here. And so let's say we map a procedure here. We'll map another one here on policy. And you can go across. It's a many relationship. I can map a policy and a procedure as well. And now that both of these are mapped, you can move forward. And now here you're able to come in and assess each of these. So you'll come through and say, do I meet this completely or partially? Help you prioritize the operational and customer impact. And then a couple of things. Because another issue that we had was, hey, we get a document that's supposed to meet the requirements, but there was no content in it. So one of the things we've put in here is, okay, you can say what it's on page 3 and or page 4 in this case, and then you go look at the requirement and you're pulling the content out of the document. So in this one, you're required to pay interest on an escrow. So, you know, you could have content in your procedure or your policy to that effect. And then is there an update required? No. And if there is a yes, then it would go into this gap module for you to build your remediation plan on that. And so I'm going to show you one last piece and then we can move over into questions. One of the things that we also do is we update the regulations and statutes on a monthly basis. And when we do, we redline the changes. Again, this is another key component of being able to bring in each of these, each of the subsections of the law and the regulation at that detailed level, is that we're able to bring each of those in. And what you get is a red line of exactly what's changed in the regulation down to the word level. And the next piece from there is our lawyers will go in to determine if there's changes required. If there are, what they're able to do is go through, and we also identify the specific requirements that are impacted because a specific subsection changed. So if you see in this case, subsection 4 and 5 are highlighted because 4 and 5 are one where requirements are written and there's a change to that. So we're streamlining the impact assessment and making it much more efficient. And then I'll show you one last piece. As the lawyers make a change, we redline those changes to the requirement as well. So instead of a mortgage loan originator, let's say we would make this a servicer. And then We add a new requirement because when you see this all in green, that means there's been a new subsection added to that that statute. Then you'll see the ones that are impacted or highlighted. And then it'll identify those as they go through. So let me pause there. I know we went through a good bit of information there quickly to see if there are any questions from the audience.
Absolutely. Some really complex stuff you guys are dealing with, so I'm sure. You mentioned working with Bradley on the regulatory review. Do you engage a law firm on client's behalf, or can you work with our counsel?
We can do both. So as we go through this, what we have is Bradley builds in the requirements that are in there. You can then have your counsel review those requirements, and you can update those, you can delete those, you can change those. Or if you wanted to just start with your own version of that, we can give you the ability just to build in your requirements from the beginning if that's how you'd want to work in your operations.
Perfect. Does the Azimuth team translate the long regulatory language from the actual law into the more business-friendly summary that you showed?
Yes, that's the Bradley team. So because Azimuth is a software company and we're not a law firm, that's why we engage the law firm and then let the legal experts do that. And what they're doing is the actual verbiage of the law, and each of those subsections is the actual text of the law. And then they're breaking that into one or multiple requirements, kind of a checklist of what you have to do to make life easier. Because one of the things I always dealt with was when I was in the operations on the banking side, everyone would say, just tell me what I have to do. It's not a problem. Just tell me what I have to do. And so the other value of this is,
please.
yeah, it's a single source of truth. So everyone in the organization is using the same translation.
That's perfect. And then I think we have time for maybe one more. How easy is it to implement the platform?
So we can have the platform up and running to you in about a week. And then the mapping of your controls, it depends on where you are, right? If you've already got that in some spreadsheets or somewhere else, then that's just a matter of translating that information in. But if that's work that has to be done, then there may be some time associated with that. But that's a one time to get your full lay of the land of your regulatory environment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to pull up that poll question so that people can let you know that they're interested in getting more information about the platform. I'm going to bring back in my co-host Clayton to help us close out our demo day.
Appreciate it, Karen, and thank you very, very much, Rowan. That was an excellent presentation, and we're wrapping up the poll right now after our last presentation from the Quality Control and Risk Summit. And we have one more quick poll for our attendees that we're going to launch right now about LoanLogix, who also presented during this session. So would greatly appreciate your response on this poll as I tee you up for the final question of the day. So this final question that, as a reminder, you can submit your answer in the chat function, is going to come from the very first couple minutes of Rohan's presentation. And the question is, on the first page of Rohan's presentation from Azimuth GCR, there was a testimonial quote from a large wholesale lender. Which lender was this quote attributed to? So this is the true test of your paying attention here. I think this one's slightly on the harder side, but let's see who we have that was really paying close attention.
I think we got
Got some answers coming in. One about Karen's cat. That is incorrect. I hate to disappoint you, Barry. We appreciate your involvement all day, but unfortunately, the cat was not the quote here. But we do have a couple people who have the answer right. My trusty sidekicks, Katie and Talia, who are administering today, will let you know who the winner is. And on that, Thank you all so much for your attention today. We went through some incredible content ranging from loan pricing and intelligence, digital mortgage origination process, quality control and risk. We really covered end to end here. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our attendees. Hope everybody has an amazing week, and we will see you next time.